Don't think I've ever struggled so much to make a full predictions video like this. The order from 1 to 20 was a nightmare, and I have some controversial opinions, so that's always fun. Let's start with 20th. 20th place, I have Ipswich Town. I just watched the overlap. Some woman who represented Ipswich said her prediction is that Ipswich will finish 12th. I'm not sure how much crack she smoked before that episode, but that is not happening. I will guarantee that right now. This is a bad team that Ipswich have. They're heavily reliant on two players in particular, Liam Delap and Omari Hutchinson. And on my notes right here, I have that they had a 25 goal contributes combined, the two of them in the Championship last year. Dominic Solanke just had 22 alone in the Premier League for Bournemouth last year. So kind of just showing the levels that you need in the Premier League. So Ipswich, for me, do not have a chance of staying up. I don't think so. They could do a Luton thing, but this is what I think about the Luton comparison. Is think of how good Luton were last year. Ross Barkley was one of the best midfielders in the league. They overperformed. They were brilliant. They gave every team a good game, and they still went down. I do not see this Ipswich team being anywhere near as good as that Luton team last year. So for me, 20th Ipswich. 19th. 19th, I have Southampton. And the reason I have Southampton is I believe we have seen this already. They got relegated 2 years ago under a different manager, but I still think it's too similar to the team they had 2 years ago. They have good players, Bella Kotchap, Kyle Walker-Peters in their team. I like the defence. Sekumara is a player that I liked from what I saw in the Premier League. He didn't quite have the impact, though, that I thought he would have in the Championship, which makes me extremely sceptical if he can make the step up to the Premier League. They have Adam Armstrong, of course, who just had another good year in the Championship, but he did flop in his 2 seasons in the Premier League. So I have no reason to think that he's going to score more than 5 goals next year. Bella Kotchap was a player that was linked a few years ago and that I wanted at Tottenham, but even they got relegated with Southampton a couple of years ago. So I'm just not really seeing it. I believe they have Flynn Downs. They also have a Dozy, talented players, but how strong this Premier League is, I don't think those players are good enough to keep Southampton in the league. Their one saving prayer is Ben Barreiras and Diaz, who just did all right for Sheffield United. He scored 6 goals in his first season in the Prem. But again, do I see him being good enough to keep Southampton in the league? Not really. Southampton, 19th. I love the Adam Lallana signing. I think he will do really well for them. He was good for Brighton. Of course, he was good for Liverpool. He's a good player. But again, there's better teams in the Premier League. And completing the relegation section of the table, I have Leicester City. Yes, I do have all 3 teams coming up to go back down. Just exactly the same that happened last year. The reason I have Leicester in this position, it's warm. It's so warm in this room. The reason I have Leicester in this position is, are we relying on Jamie Vardy in 2024? Like, really? The striker options, there's nothing. It is Jamie Vardy. It's Patson Daka, who has proven that he's not at the level. I think, Mavididi can come in and he had a good year in the Championship. I think he had somewhere near 20 goal contributions. And when they played Chelsea, he did score a very good goal as well. So he's obviously very talented. I look forward to seeing him. But do I think him alone can keep Leicester in the Premier League? No. They've signed Bobby Reid. Again, I think that's a decent signing. But is Bobby Reid going to keep you in the Premier League? I'm just not sure. He was at Cardiff a few years ago, who were in a similar position to Leicester are now, and he didn't really cut it there. So I don't think Bobby Reid is a man you can hang your hat on to get you out of the relegation zone. They have good players, Harry Winks, they still have Ndidi, but yeah, the squad is looking really weak, and I just see this as a very weak Leicester side. Kind of can't believe this team compared to what they had 4 years ago, which was one of the most balanced teams in the Premier League. So yeah, for me, they need a striker. I think if they sign a striker, big chance they can stay up, but they don't have one for now. They still have Jamie Vardy. I'm not liking that too much. 17th, I've gone for Brentford. Yeah. Ivan Toney is still there, which I think is unexpected. Did expect Arsenal, United, Tottenham, Chelsea, someone to sign him. No one has gone in for him yet. Chelsea might. They probably will. Chelsea, they sign everyone. And Spurs, well, they've signed Solanke. Man United have Xerxes and Højlund. Liverpool, I think, are happy with Nunes. So no one's really going in for him. So I think Toney will stay. And I do think that is enough to keep Brentford in the Premier League, because I do think he is a top 5, maybe top 3 striker in the entire league. He's huge. And even if he does leave, I think I will keep Brentford in this position, because I think players like Wissa and Bumo, De Silva, all can chip in with goals, and they obviously will sign someone else with the fee they would get for Toney. So Brentford 17th, I like the manager. The team is bad though. Scanning through that team the other day, I did think it was really weak, and I do think they will be close to relegation, but just missing out. 16th, again, these will be close. I think from 16th to 20th will be close, really close. You can interchange, I believe, any of these teams, but 16th, I've gone for Everton. Now, Everton to me are the ones out of these teams that have proven that they probably are Premier League quality. They had a 6 points deduction last year, but they still finished 15th. So they've shown they are Premier League quality, and Sean Dyche has made them. He's done exactly what Sean Dyche does, which is make them tough to beat. Set pieces, they're a problem. They have 2 big centre-backs. We know he loves Tarkowski, but he also has Jared Branthwaite, which has helped them become much stronger in defence. Actually still surprised, like Toney, that Branthwaite is still at Everton, because he was one of the best centre-backs in the league last year. So yeah, brilliant defence for Everton. Going forward, Dominic Calvert-Lewin probably has to start stepping up. They're lacking up front. I thought Jack Harrison was really poor last year. Is better the man? Maybe. I think this will be his 2nd season in the Prem, so maybe we'll see more from him. But ultimately, I do think Everton will struggle. I think they'll be very close to relegation, like Brentford, but they will just about make it through. In 15th place, now I do believe this part of the table is separated from the 5 I just named. I think that there's a gap there in quality. And in 15th, I've gone for Nottingham Forest. The reason I've gone for Forest is, unlike Everton, I know Brentford have Toney, but that's literally it. Ipswich don't have this, Leicester don't have this, whereas Nottingham Forest do. They have the Morgan Gibbs-Whites of the world. They have the Hudson-Odois. They have the Murillos. Murillo last year was one player that really impressed me. I'm surprised he didn't move abroad to one of the better European teams, because he really showed quality Showed he's Brazilian as well. I mean, the guy was shooting from the halfway line. He was taking on 4 men at one point from centre-back. He was a really good player. He had a really good season last year. I think Forest have a good player in him. They've also signed Milenkovic, and I believe he's the one that I used to sign on FM and was very good. So obviously strengthening the back line. Nico Williams is a good player as well. I like their team. You cannot ignore Morgan Gibbs-White, who, well, like Tony, like a Brentford, I'm still surprised he plays there as well, because I think personally for Spurs, he would be an excellent sign-in. I think he starts for every top 6 team in the league, Morgan Gibbs-White. And Chelsea. If we look at the forwards as well, Hudson-Odoi, Awoniyi, Emmanuel Dennis, Anthony Elanga, I think there's someone else, I'm not sure. Even though they're all inconsistent players, they all can chip in at different moments and all come in and out of form at different moments. And I think that will be enough to get Nottingham Forest into the top 15 of the Premier League. 14, Bournemouth. Now, in my video the other day that I made about Solanke joining Tottenham, give that a watch if you're interested in that signing and what I made of it as a Spurs fan. One stat that really intrigued me was from game week 12 last season. Bournemouth, from game week 12, were the 5th best team in the Premier League. So for the last 26 games, which is a huge chunk, 2/3 of the season, Bournemouth were the 5th best team in the Premier League. So me having them 14th is actually probably a bit low. The manager is obviously doing a fantastic job there, but it's Dominic Solanke leaving for me that brings that position down a lot. He scored 40% of Bournemouth's goals last year. His hold-up play, his running in behind, creating space, bringing others into play, his goals, of course, assists, were a huge reason why Bournemouth were so good last year. And when you take him out of that team and you have Kluivert, Anthony, I'm not sold on it. I think like Ryan Christie's a good player. I think he can chip in with a few goals next year, this season. But for me, not strong enough now going forward. And I do like Semenyo. I do like him as a player. I think he's good, has an eye for a goal too. But can he get anywhere near to that Solanke level? I don't know. They will have 65 million now, or about 55 to spend. And I do think they will spend it well. I do like some of their players, like Zabani's good, Neto, of course. But will they replace a player like Solanke, who's arguably the best player they've had in their Premier League era? 14th, I have Bournemouth. 13th, this is interesting. I have Brighton. Now, Brighton are one of the more interesting teams, I think, coming into this season, because they have the youngest manager, I believe, ever in the Premier League. He's 32 years old. I'm not sure how he plays, probably a bit like De Zerbi, but they still have some really good players, Brighton, in that team. I like Dunk. I know he gets a bit memed, but I like him. Van Heck, I think, is really good, especially on the ball. He's maybe the best defender in the Premier League on the ball. I have Estepinian at left back, still probably one of the better left backs in the league. Billy Gilmore still has more to offer, I think. Mitoma, if he can get back to his best. Brighton have one of the best wingers in the league. I think Jack Hinzelwood will start to really make an impact on the league too. He's a really talented player. When he played Spurs last year, so impressed with him. Evan Ferguson, still has to take another step, which I think he will this year. João Pedro. There's a lot of quality in this Brighton team. And despite the manager obviously having questions over him, I I think the team is good enough to carry on despite every year their best player getting stolen, like a Caicedo, like a McAllister, like Pascal Gross, a huge loss for Brighton, don't get me wrong. But I think 13th is a good place for them. It's not quite where they were a few years ago, but for Brighton, 13th is still good, I think. And yeah, I'm going for Brighton 13th. Okay, 12. 12, I'm going Fulham. I am going Fulham because of the names. Good names in this team. Look at Willian, there's great creativity. Willian, Andreas Pereira, who I still can't quite believe has done so well at Bournemouth. They've obviously just signed the star man, Emile Smith-Rowe, and if Emile Smith-Rowe can get anywhere near to his best, Fulham have one of the more talented Premier League players in their team. I remember a few years ago, Jamie Carragher made a point about Smith-Rowe being one of the better. Well, he said actually he's the best ball carrier in the Premier League. And I fully agree with him. If he's fit, there is not a better player running with the ball than Emile Smith-Rowe. He is a fantastic talent. It's a shame he's had so many injuries in the last few years, but if Fulham can get him playing, whoo, that is very exciting. Also, creativity in other areas. They have Harry Wilson, who can come off the bench, take set pieces, maybe score a goal, get a good assist. Adama Traore, which is, even though his end product is terrible, still causes major problems. Willian, a player that, again, surprised me at Fulham. He's still doing really well. And they have the two strikers. You have you do have the player that's done it in the Premier League. Raul Jimenez, of course, was very good a few years ago for Wolves. And then the young star in Muniz, who has so much potential and I really like as a player. I think this year is the year maybe he can get 15 goals in the Premier League. Pair him up with Smith-Rowe, Andreas Pereira, all these really talented players. And Fulham, for me, are on for a very good season. The depth is a bit worrying. That's one point I do have here about the depth. You look at their team, scan through it, and it's really thin. So that's a worry. But ultimately, I do think Fulham will have a good, fun season. And if Emile Smith-Rowe can stay fit, yeah, I think 12th is realistic for Fulham. Okay, so now on to 11th. And I think this is where the table splits again. I have Wolverhampton Wanderers. I like Gary O'Neill a lot. I love how adaptable he is. I'm out of breath. Why am I so out of breath? Yeah, Wolves, Gary O'Neill, I like. He's so adaptable. I like how he can play some of the best football in the league at times. Have you seen them in pre-season? They look really good. Against my team, Spurs, they were one of the teams that impressed me the most on the ball. But then they can do a Man City performance where they have 10%, 20% of the ball, come away with a 1-0 win. He's adaptable. I really like him. I like the way he speaks. There's many parts of Wolves' team that I like as well. So I love the fullbacks. Ait Nuri, I'm surprised Man United haven't gone in for him. I think he would suit that team really well. And then Semedo on the other side, which I think everyone wrote off a little bit, has become one of the better right backs in the entire league. He's gotten better every single year for me at Wolves. The midfield I like as well. I think that's underrated. Mario Lemina, I think he lacks a little bit of consistency, but when he's on it, he's excellent. Tommy Doyle, I think, will have a big year. On the ball, very good, doesn't lose it. Just a really intelligent player. And then João Gomez, probably the star of the team now that Pedro Neto has obviously left, which is no doubt a big loss for Wolves, and it 100% weakens them. But I think they can cope. They still have attacking talent in there. So I do like Wolves. Cunha is a striker that I really like. First half of last year, he was great on the ball, but he was so unclinical. And in the second half, he did kind of fix that. Ended up getting quite a decent amount of goal contributions in the league. He reminds me of Moussa Dembele on the ball. He's so strong. He's really good at dribbling, beats players really well. And now, if he can be clinical for a whole season, Wolves have a very good player on their hands. For 40 million, they would want that, or 50 million, however it costs. But yeah, I like Wolves 11th for me. I think they would be really happy with that. After a few years ago, they weren't in the trenches, but they weren't a million miles from going down. So 11th, I have Wolves. Into the top 10. Now this is when it got very, very difficult. The order, tough. Seriously tough. And in 10th place, maybe controversially, I have got Newcastle United. It feels like the hard-working, kind of average to good level of talent has ran its course a little bit for Newcastle. It does seem like that team is just screaming for some added actual quality. Now, don't get me wrong, they do have that. Bruno Guimaraes, Alexander Isak, Anthony Gordon, Trippier-ish. He had a really poor year last year, but I still count him in it. They do have quality. I just don't think enough. Obviously, Tonali comes back, so that's great. But when you have 4 players that are the real quality, I think they need more. And I think that team has become stale. If surely Botman will improve. I think he will. Shah's a good player. They have a good team. They do have a good team. Comparing it to the rest, and there also does seem to be, I don't know, a negativity around Newcastle that I do think will affect them a little bit. They have no Europe. However, I do not think that will matter. My team did not have Europe last year, yet we seem like the most unfit team in the entire league. I think it's going to need a massive Anthony Gordon and Isak carry to take Newcastle if they want to be in those European positions. Those two are going to have to do a Rondon Perez type thing, or a Callum Wilson and Saint Maximin thing. I think that's what kind of season it will be for Newcastle, heavily reliant on those two. And I think they will have good years, Isak especially, probably the second best striker in the entire league. But yeah, there's still just things I'm not there with Newcastle. Don't get me wrong, good team. The entire 11 is good. Livramento, Botman, Shah. They have Kelly now, don't they? Obviously, it'll be interesting to see how he does. Trippier, Tonali, Bruno. They have a good team. 10th. 10th. I'm going for 10th. I'm going for 10th because the team in 9th, I think, will pip them. I really do. Crystal Palace in 9th. Yeah, Crystal Palace in 9th. Now, I want to just start this by saying, if Crystal Palace had Michael Olise, I would put them in 5th. I know. Little bit crazy. But when you look at the way they finished last year and how highly I rate their players, plus Michael Olise, who I really believe will be world class if he isn't already, he will be one of the best wingers in the world. I have no doubt. You've seen him in the Olympics. Last year he was excellent. The season before that he managed to get 10 assists in the league. The guy's an assist machine. One of the best crossers in the world. His left foot is just magic. He can go on his right. So that's why I think they would have been 5th if they had Olise. But they have lost him. It's a big loss. They've brought Sarr in a few years ago. I think that would have had much more hype than it does now. However, it's still a good player. He's still good. It will be very interesting to see how he does. Won't be as good as Elise, so I've dropped them down to 9th, but I think Palace fans will be pretty happy if it finishes like that. And I just want to go into the form, because the last 7 games of last year, they won 6 of their last 7. Drew 1. If you actually look at their form starting from the last 7 games, plus their pre-season, it is out of their last 11, so that's 11 games in total, 7 in the Prem, they've had 4 friendlies, they've won 9 and drew 2. They haven't lost in 11 games. For me, Glasner, I don't think relies on personnel. So Mateta won't be back for a while because of the Olympics, so maybe a week or two after everyone else. Obviously, they've lost Elise, but I don't really think it matters because I think the manager is so special. Won the Europa League at Frankfurt, didn't he? Obviously, last year came in, and for me, he was manager of the year. I like it. I like what's going on at Palace. Eze, amazing player. Gehi, we just saw how good he was for England. Joachim Andersen is a very good player. I like the keeper. Johnston, I think, is good. So is Dean Henderson. Tyreek Mitchell, of course, a really reliable, was so good under Glasner last year. Adam Wharton, Czech Decore. I really like this team. And if Mateta can stay on the form that he's currently in, yeah, Palace will have a pretty good season for me. And I am going to go for 9th. Which means there's 8 teams left. And in 8th place is Chelsea. Chelsea could finish 20th. Chelsea could finish 1st. For me, I've gone 8th. There's humongous quality in this Chelsea side. Cole Palmer being the main example. For me, maybe a generational player. I'm not sure on that. He might be, though. He's that good. Cole Palmer, Pedro Neto. They're thinking about getting Osimhen. If that happens, surely they get European football. Pedro Neto will probably be injured at some point. Cole Palmer, though, can drag them to 8th minimum, to 10th minimum, I think. They, of course, have Nkunku as well, natural goal scorer. He looks fit at the moment, so that will obviously help Chelsea this year. I like the Dewsbury Hall sign-in. I just think it adds, I don't know, balance in there. Someone who knows the league well, knows the Championship, obviously was in the Premier League before the Championship. I think he will help Enzo or Caicedo, whoever he plays with. So I do like that signing a lot. If Reece James, which he won't, stay fit, but if he did, I would have more hope that they obviously finish high up in the league. I think Chilwell's actually fit at the moment, so that's obviously good. Colwill is very talented. They have a good team. They just have too many players. But I don't think they'll finish below 8th. I think they'll finish 8th this season. And they did win the last 5 games of last year. Yeah, Chelsea 8th. Not sure on the manager. In 7th place, I have Manchester United. All depends on Rashford. Depending on Rashford's level, I think Rashford's level determines whether they finish 4th or whether they finish 10th. If they get the best Rashford, they finish 4th for me. If they get the worst Rashford, they probably finish 10th. So I've gone for the middle ground, and I have gone 7th for Manchester United. The one thing I will say is they were the only team, when I was looking through the team, where I literally just started laughing. The team is not great. The midfield, I'm not liking that. They need an addition in there for me if they are to be serious this year, because it just seems like the same thing is going to happen again with the same personnel in midfield. They're just going to get ran over by teams. They have signed De Ligt. They have signed Mazraoui as well, which will help. Of course, I like the De Ligt signing. I do. Just because he hasn't worked at Bayern or Juve doesn't mean he won't work at Man United. I think the Premier League could suit him. He's huge for a start. He's a massive aerial threat. He's better than Harry Maguire. I personally believe. I don't think it's very difficult to be better than Harry Maguire. I think him and Martinez will be a good back two. Onana scares me. He can make a world-class save, and then he should make a save that he doesn't. To be honest, the latter tends to happen more often. I think Dalot was improved last year. Garnacho should improve. Højlund, Xerxes. I do like their team, Man United. It's the midfield that scares me, and the depth. The depth is appalling. They've obviously just lost Wan-Bissaka. Luke Shaw's always injured. Yeah. I think for the depth, there's obviously still not amazing quality up front yet, depending on if Rashford does well or not. But if he doesn't, that's a concern, a huge concern for Man United. The positives I think they will have is obviously they just won the FA Cup. That breeds confidence. Jadon Sancho is back. Amad Diallo will get more game time. He obviously looks very good. And Manu, full season, second season in the Prem, should be much better. So for me, 7th for Man United. In 6th place, I have... Oh, no I don't. I have West Ham United. Fair to say, 10 out of 10 for the transfer window. They had a good team anyway. To add Max Kilman, Todibo, Somerville, the Championship's best player last year, a huge additions. Fulkrug, who just had an amazing year, Champions League final with Dortmund, a very good Euros for Germany. I know they went out early, but doesn't mean he didn't have a good personal tournament. So I love the signings, 10 out of 10. To get Max Kilman and Todibo, one of the biggest talents in the world as a defender, not Max Kilman, Todibo. Max Kilman's very good too, left-footed. Very important to have a player like that. And he's tall. I think he suits Lopetegui. God, I love their window. Yeah, they've done really well. Obviously embedding those players will be interesting. I do not think they will all hit the ground running straight away. And to be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of Lopetegui. I think he's a little bit overrated. His time at Wolves was overrated. He's flopped at Spain, flopped at Real Madrid. Did he take the Real Madrid job? Or Spain? No, he took the Real Madrid job, didn't he? Did he? I feel like he did. I'm pretty sure he flopped at Real Madrid. I'm just not his biggest fan. I'm not his biggest fan. The football isn't great either. But to add those players, like I mentioned, on top of a team that's already had Mohamed Kudus, who I believe has world-class potential, and we will see more of that this year, which is a big reason why they're 6th for me. Jared Bowen, who's a 20-goal-a-season striker, which is amazing to have, very rare to have one of those. Very consistent goal scorer and just a brilliant player. So to add these players on top of those two, I mean, yeah, West Ham have had a transformative window, really. And that 11 is really strong. Of course, Edson Alvarez, 2 in the 6, who had a good year last year. I know West Ham fans like him a lot. They're going to be very tough to beat. They are going to be very tough to beat, West Ham. Somerville will be interesting to see if he can make that step up. He was okay for Leeds in the Premier League, but obviously I didn't watch much Championship last year. Obviously, though, everyone's raving about him. He must have been pretty good. This position was fought between 2 teams last year. For me, it will be the same 2 teams again this year fighting for that spot. But who will it be? Aston Villa in 5th for me. Now, it's very close between Villa. To be honest, it's very close from Newcastle to 4th, I believe, or 3rd even. Villa have a very balanced team. That's what I like about Villa. The midfield, great. The defence, great. The attackers, great. Or it's not all great, but it's all good. And I like that. They are a weakened team, no doubt about that. Losing Douglas Luiz is massive. Bringing in Onana, good player. I like him. He's nowhere near Douglas Luiz. What Douglas Luiz offered on the ball, off the ball, set pieces. I mean, he was the penalty taker. He took corners, and very good corners, by the way. He scored goals. He was excellent last year. A huge reason why they beat Tottenham to that top 4 spot. So to lose him, there's no doubt they are weakened. There are positives though for Villa. So Europa League, I do not think will affect them, because looking through that team, depth is the word. Depth. Every single position is strong. And they have, talents coming through. Still have Jacob Ramsey. It's not a breakthrough season. He's already had that. But he had an injury. I think this will be a big year for him. The attacking options they have, like in depth and quality. So they have Philogene, who just had an excellent year in the Championship at Fulham. Duran, who looks awesome. Every time he comes on, makes an impact. They have Morgan Rogers, who I have not seen him come on the pitch and not score yet. And obviously they have Leon Bailey and Ollie Watkins, the stars of the team. So it's just a good team, isn't it? It just is a good team. I like it. I like the team. Europa League won't be a problem, but they are worse for me coming into this season. The problem is they've not done really well in the transfer window. The one thing I'll say, actually, one more positive, is the midfield. I think Tielemans will have a bigger part to play. Didn't really settle himself in that side last year, but when he played, I thought he was really good. The Arsenal game is the first one I think of. I think he'll be better. Obviously, they have McGinn, Onana, Ramsey, and even Ross Barkley now as well, again. So Villa 5th. Considering they have Europa League, I still think they will be pretty happy with that. A better window needed, though, for me to keep them in that 4th spot. Let's go 4. Let's go 4. And it is my team, Tottenham Hotspur. Now, I am not confident at all in this prediction. 4th. I think Tottenham could finish 8th. Genuinely. I look at this Tottenham team, and to me, coming into this season, it's too samey. I thought last year, Tottenham proved they can compete with the best teams in the league. They went to the Emirates, played very well. In fact, probably better than Arsenal. They went to the Etihad, played better than Man City. They played against Man City at home, were the better team, but lost. They played Arsenal at home. Okay, Arsenal were 3-0 up at half-time, but Spurs came back 1-2-0 in the second half. They proved they can compete, beat Liverpool at home. And I thought that was, they were top of the league as well for 3 months of the season. I thought this transfer window is the one where we take ourselves into that conversation. We haven't done that. Go watch my Solanke video. It's not too positive. Do I think he'll do pretty decent at Spurs? Yeah, I think he'll do good. Is it enough? Is it enough to be competing with Arsenal? Is it enough to be competing with Man City, who have Erling Haaland? No, I don't think it is. Will Archie Gray take Tottenham from 5th to 3rd? No. I do believe Tottenham will move one step further, 4th, but only because of Aston Villa's lack of business and just natural improvements in the system under Ange. Spurs do have a wild card. His name is Lucas Bergvall. Now, do I think he will start straight away? Probably not. However, the talent that this kid has is genuinely massive. And if he starts to, maybe even we start to see that potential this season, I think Spurs could be on for a good season, of course. If Archie Gray delivers, one player I think will have a big season for Tottenham is Bentancur. He was injured for the start of last season, so he couldn't really get up to grips with it in terms of sharpness. But he has a full season now, fully fit. I think this will be a big year for Bentancur. And yeah, I mean, Tottenham have sold, I wouldn't say well, because the fees are terrible, but they have sold players that they needed to sell. Just seems a bit stale to me. Tottenham haven't improved enough. They haven't capitalised on Villa not signing well either. And Liverpool losing Klopp. Speaking of Liverpool, in third place, I do have Liverpool. Now, Liverpool are not third because of how good they are. They are third because the teams below them haven't recruited well enough for me. Liverpool will be worse this year. They will be worse. They will not compete 35 games into the season. They're still better than the rest. And they will... I can see the top two, a big gap there. But I think Liverpool... there's players... I think Nunes has to improve. He has to explode this year. And I think he kind of will. He won't be world class, but I think he will cement himself as that number 9 for Liverpool. And even if he doesn't, Jota's there, who I rate very highly. Salah, that's a big one. Salah. Is he on the decline? Yes. I do think, though, he will be better than what he was for the first half of last year. I actually think for the first half of this year, he'll be very good. And then for the second half, I think he might fall off a little bit. One player in particular I want to talk about for Liverpool is Gakpo. Because is it just me, or was he excellent in the Euros? Like, on that left-hand side, he looked so quick, so sharp, extremely threatening in front of goal. Him or Luis Diaz will have a big year this year, which they need. And they have so much quality. Harvey Elliott, McAllister, Szoboszlai. These are really good players for Liverpool. But this year, again, I think they will maybe improve. Szoboszlai was good, just lacking consistency. Harvey Elliott, this is the year, isn't it? This is the year he has to cement himself in that Liverpool 11. But yeah, they're third, not because of how much I think they are very good. They have very good players. Salah, Diaz, McAllister, Van Dijk, Trent, Alisson. Like, these are actually world-class players on the decline, but they are world-class. But I still don't think it's because of how good they are that they're third. It's because of the teams below them, for me, haven't done enough. So for me, third for Liverpool. This was so difficult. Like, so difficult. When I tell you how long I have spent on this decision, and I still don't even know fully who will win the Premier League. Let's talk about the key factors. Obviously, Arsenal and Man City are the final two teams in here. Let's talk about Man City first. So, the thing that will separate Arsenal and Man City this year, or the point I think people will give Arsenal, is the hunger. And while I don't disagree, there are still many players in this Man City side that haven't achieved all that they want in football yet. So they're still very hungry, in my opinion. And those players are Haaland, Gvardiol, Jack Grealish, Doku, Oscar Bob, Kovacic, Akanji, Phil Foden, and Matheus Nunes. I still think all of these players still haven't achieved what they want in the game. I mean, they're all young, most of them. They still have plenty to achieve in their careers. And they haven't quite reached that level of, greatness yet. So I think all those players, key players for City, will be hungry. Especially someone like Haaland. I don't think Haaland cares that Man City have won 4 in a row. He's just going for the 5. He wants to be the first player to do 5. And that's an extra motivation as well. 5 in a row. Like 5. I know no one has done 4, but 5, that's a huge motivator, isn't it? Because who will ever do that again? Stones, Ake, Diaz, I think these players, they've achieved greatness at Man City and in football. I still trust all of those players though to keep the same hunger. They just seem like players that aren't going to drop motivation at all. You then have someone like Rodri, who there's a different level of greatness. The guy, for me, should win the Ballon d'Or. He's just won the Euros. He's won a treble. He's won 4 titles in a row. Like, this guy is beyond now legendary for Man City and in just football in general. So, but he's so good. But he's so good that I don't think it matters. And then you have the players that I'm actually worried about a little bit. So we've got Edison, Kyle Walker, Bernardo Silva, and Kevin De Bruyne. All players that I think are noticeably not as good as they were. KDB is still fantastic. But he's mentioned Saudi. And when you mention Saudi, there's a bit of a problem there. That's a red flag for me. It shows that you've you know that you've done what you need. Edison, I didn't think was good last year. Thought he was poor. Same as Bernardo Silva. Didn't think he was very good last year either. And Kyle Walker, I thought had a bit of a dip. So I'm worried about these players, and these are massive players for City. Like, these are the 4 best players for City. These are starting 11 guaranteed for Man City. So that does worry me a little bit. But the majority of players, I still think have a huge amount of hunger about them. Arsenal. So I've thought about the Havertz thing quite a lot. Don't know how to feel about it. Is Havertz enough to win a Premier League? I don't know. However, I've thought about it. If Arsenal just go with a striker, is there any point? Because Haaland will go down as the greatest striker ever. So is there any point trying to beat Man City at that game? Especially when they have Kevin De Bruyne supplying him. Or do you go different? Do you do the Havertz thing and you just go, we're just going to work extremely hard. We're going to have a striker that sacrifices himself, and we believe in our quality in other areas that can win us the league. I actually do think that's the smarter option. Are they good enough to do it though? Is Saka good enough? I think Saka is good enough. Is Martinelli good enough? I think there's still questions. Don't know what happened last year to him. You know, so, Odegaard's clearly good enough. Arsenal are good enough to win the league. They can win the league. It's just, will they win the league? Because Man City just keeps seeming to be able to do it. The one thing Arsenal have to do next year is beat Man City, I think. Stop going there being happy with a draw. They should have done it last year. Arsenal, for me, should have 2 Premier League titles right now. But they don't. They have to change that mentality a little bit. The Calafiori signing, unbelievable. Love it. I mean, I don't love it as a Spurs fan because it's good. But if you're an Arsenal fan, that's incredible. One of the better centre-backs in the whole Euros. He was good for Genoa last year. It was Genoa, wasn't it? I think it was Genoa. Very impressive player. Very impressive. To just sign him as maybe a backup. I mean, my God. Or left back. That Arsenal defence becomes even stronger now. He's amazing from passing out the back. He's very good at getting forward as well. That's a superb signing. Timber is back. I think Raya would be better. A full season, I think for 15 or so games, he was a bit dodgy last year. Now he will have a full season where he's playing at the level that Arsenal need him to. The one thing that does concern me is Rice. I think a lot of teams will look at that performance versus Denmark in the Euros, where he literally couldn't be pressed at all in that game. He looked terrible. That killed the Rodri comparisons. Not that I think there was one anyway, but that definitely killed it. So they need to sort that out and get Declan Rice in the 8, not as a lone 6, in my opinion. So who wins? So for me, there's 3 players on one of these teams that wins this team the league. So in first place, and to win the league, is Man City for the 5th time in a row. The 3 players for me are Rodri, Haaland, and Jeremy Doku. Why Jeremy Doku? When Jeremy Doku becomes world class, we can see that he's a diamond in the rough at the moment. When he becomes world class, which I think he will make a big step this year, because towards the end of last year he was getting there. I think this year is his year. And I think his world class is better than Martinelli, is better than Saka. So that's why I've gone for Man City. I think those players will win it for Man City. The hunger for 5 as well. I don't think Arsenal will have that hunger over Man City. I still think there's so many of these Man City players that have something to prove in their career. So, it's very tough. It's very close. Arsenal are amazing. And it wouldn't actually surprise me if Arsenal smash it this year and win by 20 points. But I've gone for Man City. Yeah, go for Man City. Go for Man City. I'm not changing. I've thought about it too much. Man City win the league. Let me know, please, who you think will win the Premier League. Who do you support? Where do you think they will finish? And if you enjoyed the video, give it a like. Subscribe if you are new. And thank you very much for watching.